Hi, I'm Christy and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm here to wrap up the books I read for the first half of October. So it's now the middle of October, and this is always the time when it comes to filming that I absolutely regret every decision I've ever made, every book I've read, because now I have to chat about all of the books. So let's see. It's the middle of the month and I have read 33 books so far for October. I know it's a lot. There have just been so many new releases and I know I'm going to be busy the last half of the month / next week. I will be gone in Vegas. So I was just trying to get to all the things. I want to read all the books all the time, all the things. My TBR is endless and I want to get to as many as I can every month. So that is what October has been for me so far. We have a lot of books to get through today and I'm going to try to keep this quick. I kind of want to just get through a lot of these. Not all of them I super loved. Of course, as always though, if you ever want to see more of my thoughts or my full reviews on any of the books that I read, I do review every book I read and you can get to that on my Goodreads, which is always linked in the description of all of my videos. I also have all the books linked as well, so if you want to go back and see which ones I was talking about, you forgot an author, you forgot the title name, whatever the case, you can see that in the description of the video as well. With all that out of the way, let's just jump into these reads. So yeah, 33 of them, let's go. First up is The Heir Apparent's Rejected Mate by Kate C. Wells. This is the second book in her 5-packs series. So I loved book 1 at the end of September and had to continue on in the series. So this is my first read for October. And this one I ended up giving a 3.5/4 stars. So like I said, I loved the first book in the series. It was so good. It was actually my favorite read of September. It just blew me away and was everything that I needed at that time. This book though, I came into it obviously with high expectations and it kind of it was okay. The beginning was harder for me to get into, but the ending definitely brought it back up. So basically this entire series has the rejected mates trope and they're all werewolf shifter romances. One thing I do love about this series is all the groveling we get from the heroes of after they've rejected their mates and then they're trying to win them back, protect them, take care of them, all of those things. So good. This one does include an accidental surprise pregnancy, which is in the synopsis, so I knew it was coming. Like I said, the beginning did take me a while to get into. It's very slow burn and kind of drawn out, but once the plot and the story started to pick up about halfway point, then I really enjoyed it. I really liked the ending. Like I said, it was still good. I gave this one 3.5/4 stars and I'm excited to continue on in the series. Next up, I read Madam by Sarah Kate, which is the 6th book in her Salacious Players Club series and the end of the series, as of now at least. This one was a new release for October and I actually did an entire video of chatting about I think 11 new releases that I read for October, so you can see that video and see which ones I recommend, all of those things, my thoughts on all of them. I will link it in the description of this video. But basically, this one was okay for me and I ended up giving it 4 stars. This one is a FFM relationship where the heroine that we follow, Eden, who we've seen throughout the entire series, I did love all of the moments with her and getting to see her character kind of in the club and outside of the club as well. Kind of second chance with one of her exes, and then we actually end up getting Eden, her ex-boyfriend, and then his current girlfriend, so they become a throuple, they become a thing, and I wasn't really sold on the girlfriend of the hero of the group. Something about her interactions was just a little bit too insta-lovey, too much. I feel like they all needed to talk more than they did, if that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, it's still a good series, and yeah, I gave it 4 stars. Next up is Phantom in Time by Eugene O'Reilly. This was the book club pick for Historical Hellions, and this was their pick for, I think, September, but the live show was in October, so I read it the beginning of the month as well, and this was just a fun time. I gave it 3.5/4 stars. So this is an older historical romance. It's available on Kindle Unlimited as well, and this one, I wasn't expecting a ton. It was just, fun and entertaining for what it is. So it's not a favorite, but, it was just entertaining, easy to fly through, and a fun time. Basically, it's a Phantom of the Opera retelling with time travel, and just a messy playboy-ish hero, and just I don't know, it was just fun and entertaining for what it was. Next, I read Good Game by Madison Fox. This is her debut romance, the first in a new series, and I love this one so much I gave it 5 stars. This is actually one of my favorite new releases of the month. This one follows video game players where they are masked streamers, so they wear masks, they don't show their faces when they're streaming their video game plays. And this one was just a fun time and I loved it. It does have the hidden identity trope as well, with the heroine meeting the hero when he's masked as the video game streamer, and then she also meets him in real life unmasked. And so she knows them both and doesn't realize it's the same person, but of course he does. And it's just so good. There's a bit of a romantic suspense element at the end, and just loved it. It's a great one. It doesn't read like a debut romance, and I mean that in the best way. It was just so good. Had such a fun time with it. Definitely check it out. Next is The Best Laid Plans by Carla Sorensen. This is the first in a new series from her. This one is published through Montlake though, so if you do the Kindle Unlimited download, you'll get the read and listen feature, which means you get the audiobook with the Kindle Unlimited read. That's how I read it. And this one was just all right as well. I gave it 3.5/4 stars. So in this one, the hero is a retired football player player and the heroine is a home renovator. So the hero ends up inheriting or acquiring this home from one of his friends who passes away, and the friend was in the middle of a historically accurate renovation of the house, and the heroine is the renovator for that. And so the hero decides to continue on with those plans and ends up staying, living in the carriage house on the property with the heroine while they rebuild this home. So it was okay. I used to really love home renovation shows, so for me that part was super interesting. But like for the romance, like it was okay, it was cute, it was fine, 3.5 stars. Next is The Phantom of Drury Lane by Kate Bateman. I love this one, another one of my favorites for this month, and I gave it 5 stars. This is a Phantom of the Opera retelling historical romance novella, and it is just so fun. The hero in here is the heroine's brother's friend, and the heroine's super into like adventures and mysteries and unraveling things. So they had a moment in the past years ago, and they kind of have like a little bit of history of both of them being into one another, but neither thinking the other one is into them, which I love that trope so much. And this one, I was just obsessed with the couple. They're so much fun. Loved all the Phantom of the Opera nods. And here, basically, the hero, he comes back from Waterloo. He has a physical scar on his face, and he owns or co-owns part of the Drury Lane Theater. And so he tells the heroine how he knows she's into like mysteries and adventures, and there's currently a bet out there for anybody who can figure out the name and unmask like the phantom who's been haunting the theater. So she gets involved, and he of course helps her along as well. And then, I mean, we know where this is going. It was just so good. I was obsessed with their chemistry. We get a lot of backstory to it as well for it being a novella. I definitely recommend checking it out. Next, I had an arc of Iris Kelly Doesn't Date by Ashley Herring Blake. This is the 3rd book in the Bright Falls series. So this whole series has been sapphic contemporary romances, and this one we get fake dating as well. And I gave this one 3.5/4 stars. So in this one of the heroines is a new romance writer, and she's on her 2nd book and kind of having a slump. She can't figure out what to write, what to do. So she ends up deciding to try out for a play to kind of like, you know, inspire her and get some fresh ideas. She ends up going there and tries out for it. And when she's there, she runs into the other heroine who she actually almost had a one-night stand with the previous night when she met her at a bar. They went home together, but things took a turn. Like one of them ended up throwing up all over the place. Like it was a whole thing. She gets there, the heroine who's already a part of the theater, all of her friends and her ex is there, and they all assume that the two are dating. So they are kind of like, you know, just go along with it and pretend for me. So it goes from there. Like this one was just fun. I really liked how it was exploring kind of like, you know, finding your way in life, trying out a new career, kind of like all of those changes. It was just a fun time. Not my favorite in the series. That's still Delilah Green Doesn't Care, which is the 1st book. But yeah, this one was a solid one in the series. Next, I had an arc of Yours to Forget by Emily Silver. This one is the 4th book in her Dixon Creek Ranch series, and this one I ended up giving 3.5/4 stars. This whole series, all the books have just been cute, low angst, small town books, and they're all pretty short as well. Like I think they're all under 300 pages, so they're quick to fly through. This one in particular, I really liked how we get sports romance, but we get it for both the hero and the heroine. So the hero is a football player who actually gets injured at the beginning of the story and is going through physical therapy and rehab to try to make a comeback. And then the heroine is a professional skier, and a similar situation, like she had an accident and is trying to go through physical therapy as well to get back out there. So it's second chance as well. They end up going to the same rehab place and seeing each other again. And for a while, they're kind of like doing the rehab and physical therapy together. They have the same like trainer. And it kind of goes from there. Like I said, they're just like very low angst and easy to fall into. So yeah, 3.5/4 stars. Next up, I read 2 Halloween novellas by Shay Sanders. So first up is Trick, and this one I gave 3 stars to. This is super duper short. It's like 30 pages, I think. Just a quick and easy, fun little Halloween read. So basically the 2 characters end up getting set up on a blind date by their friends. And so the hero ends up taking the heroine to a pumpkin patch and like a hayride, and she is like totally not into it and not feeling it and starts to get like itchy from the hay and is just like, I want to go home. And so they end up leaving together. Kind of goes from there very quick. Like these are erotica, so it definitely jumps into things quickly. And yeah, it's just like a short read. I really liked in here how the hero was not the heroine's type at all. I think that's fun when that's kind of explored in romances where they're not always like instantly into or instantly attracted to one another. So that was fun. I gave it 3 stars. So then I followed it up with Treat, which is the next Halloween novella from Shay Sanders. And this one I gave 3.5 stars too. So like I said, these are just super short little erotica novellas. And in this one, the hero and the heroine, they're actually already a couple when the story starts. They've been together for 6 years. They have 2 kids. And they're kind of like feeling like they want to spice things up, or the hero is wanting to spice things up for the heroine. She's into more of like sensual, steamy times than he is usually into. He ends up surprising her one night with a trip to a local sex club where all of their fantasies can be made true. So they get set up with this pleasure guide who is there to kind of take them around for the night, show them all the things, do whatever they want with him as well. And so it goes from there. Like I said, it's super quick, super steamy, just like a fun time. I liked how the couple in here, they obviously have a ton of trust and a ton of communication with one another, and seeing their scenes with their pleasure guide, who is kind of like the hostess for the night. It's just fun. Like we get some like menage type scenes, and in the end, the hero and heroine end up going home together. But like, it was just a fun time. So yeah, 3.5 stars. Then I decided to just keep rolling with the Halloween reads. So I read her Halloween Treat, and this one I loved so much. I gave it 4.5 stars. This is part of the Men at Work series, which is the author's Harlequin Blaze series, and they're just all fun. Like I know there's a Christmas one, which I've read a couple years ago, and there's a Thanksgiving one as well. And this was the Halloween one that I had never gotten to, so I decided to check it out. And this one, I forget how much I enjoy this author's books until I read them again, but this one was just so good and I loved it so much. It is available on Hoopla and Libby, so definitely check those out if you have them. So this one takes place on and around Halloween. So basically at the start of the story, the heroine finds out that her boyfriend of 2 years is actually a married man, and she had no idea. So she's devastated and has to go back home anyways for her brother's wedding, which is going to take place on Halloween. So she heads back home to her family's like very remote cabin in Oregon. And so along the way, her best friend is convincing her, like, when you go back home, you just need to like hook up, have a rebound, have some fun, like get your boyfriend out of your system. So she ends up going to her family's cabin. And when she gets there, she realizes that they've done some renovations, and like there's a renovator in the house when she gets there. And then she actually realizes that she knows this hot handyman who is in there fixing up the house, and it's her brother's best friend from high school. So she hasn't seen him in like 10 years, but he has actually always secretly pined for her. Ugh, it's just like so fun. This one was just a fun, good time. Like the hero, he keeps condoms in his toolkit. Her brother is rooting for them to be together. She was his high school crush. Like just all of the good things. Their chemistry and steam was so good. Definitely recommend checking it out. Next up, I read Don't Forget Me Tomorrow by A.L. Jackson. This is the second book part of her Time River series, and I love this one so much, I gave it 5 stars. This one is small town, friends to lovers. It has best friend's little sister. It has a single mom heroine. It has mutual pining and a little bit of romantic suspense elements as well. Basically in this, the hero and heroine have both been into each other for years, but never have made a move on it. And the hero is one of those who is like tortured and broken and has all of this like damage from his past. He has secrets and he doesn't want to get the heroine involved, which is one of my catnip tropes. I love that so much, when the hero thinks he's too damaged, too broken for the heroine. And so it has that, and it's just so good. Basically something happens with the heroine and her son, and the hero is like, you need to move into my place. And when they're there is when the heroine hears the hero kind of moaning her name one night from his room. So she shows up into the room thinking something else is going on, but he's actually, you know, pleasuring himself. So then they both kind of realize at the same time that maybe both of them are an option for one another, and it kind of goes from there. It's just like a fun time. I love a tattooed pierced hero. Obsessed with this cover, like so good. And yeah, I just love this one. Next up, I read Daddy of the Sea by Gillian Graves. So this one, the author like announced it separately, but it's actually part of an anthology. So it's part of the Monsters in Love Volume 4, which is on Kindle Unlimited. I only read it for this novella though, and this one I ended up giving it 3 stars too. This one is just a very short and smutty monster novella where the heroine is a human, and then the hero has tentacles, and he is this like king of the sea. It has very much like King Triton vibes, which I was honestly here for. There's lots of like punishments. Basically, the heroine ends up throwing a motorcycle from her ex-boyfriend into the ocean, and the hero pops up from the ocean and is like, excuse me, like no littering, no trashing our oceans. And so he comes up to punish her, but of course like sensual punishments. We have some daddy kink in here. Like it was just a fun time. Kind of leaves off on a happily for now, I would say. So I don't know if the author will do more with this in the future, but like for what it was just a fun time, and I gave it 3 stars. Next up is Boot Up by Danielle Allen, and this one is a Halloween novella. It's on Kindle Unlimited, and I give this one 3.5 stars. So this one, the heroine's in college and she decides to go home for the weekend for Halloween weekend. So she leaves campus. She recently went through a breakup and she just wants to like go back home. And it's also her best friend's kind of like Halloween costume themed birthday party. So she ends up meeting the hero there at a party, and they have mutual friends, and they kind of just like instantly hit it off, and there is a power outage involved, and so they end up spending a lot of time together. I just thought their chemistry was super believable, and I was here for it. We also have like a little bit of spooky season vibes as well. So there's like Ouija boards, and they're sharing scary stories, and there's like a fun little mystery-ish element in here as well at the end. So yeah, I just had fun with this one. If you can tell, I've been trying to balance like Halloween spooky season reads with the new releases for this month. So that is why I picked up this one. Next, I had an arc of Shadows of You by Catherine Cowles, which this is book 4 in her Lost and Found series, and this one I gave 4.5 stars to. This one is a small town. We have Grumpy Sunshine. We have a single mom heroine. We have the heroine in hiding. And then we have a broken, tortured hero as well. And of course, we have romantic suspense elements. So I will say if you enjoy romantic suspense and Catherine's romantic suspenses, you're going to really like this one. For me, romantic suspense kind of has to be done like a certain way for me to enjoy it. So that is why I gave it 4.5 stars, but that is a me thing. So I think if you love romantic suspense, you'll definitely enjoy this one. Catherine Cowles always brings it with the prologues. And so in this one, we find out that the heroine is actually in hiding. We cut to 5 years later and we see her and her daughter living in the small town, which is where the whole series has taken place. And she knows the hero because she knows actually his family and is friends with some of his siblings. So they actually end up meeting at the beginning of the story when there's an injured deer on her property, and the hero shows up and he actually works for Fish and Wildlife, I believe. And so he shows up to help out. So it kind of goes from there and he gets involved in their lives and becomes like super protective over them later on in the story when some things start to unfold for the heroine. I will say I did figure out like the mystery and kind of like criminal plot point to the story early on, but I mean, that didn't take away from the actual romance in the story. Like I am always a sucker for a broody, broken hero who falls into taking care of a heroine and her child, and this definitely brought that. So yeah, just such a fun one, and gave it 4.5 stars. Next up, I've been a co-host for a read-along for the Green Creek series by TJ Klune. So book 2 was Ravensong, and I ended up giving this one a 4/4.5 stars. This is basically a paranormal shifter romance series, and in this one we have a second chance between a werewolf shifter and then a witch hero, and it was just everything I wanted. I will say in particular with this series, like the romances aren't what's keeping me going or keeping me intrigued. I feel like the romances are kind of secondary to the found family and the paranormal plot of the story, which I'm super invested in. So like I like it for that, and romances are just like a nice little extra bit for me. So yeah, I gave this one 4.5 stars. Next up, I read My Roommate is a Vampire by Jenna Levine, and this one I ended up giving 3 stars to. So this one I will say the first half really had me sold. I was really enjoying it. It was almost a 4-star read, but the last half started to drag for me and kind of lost my interest. So basically in this one, it's a paranormal rom-com with a vampire as a roommate, as the title suggests. Basically in here, the heroine is in need of a new apartment when the story starts. She finds this like super good deal, which is like $200 a month. And so she's like, this can't be real. Like, can it? Like, I hope it is. And she ends up moving in with a hero who she finds like super quirky and kind of interesting and mysterious. And of course, as the story unfolds, she realizes that he's a vampire. So it kind of goes from there. It's their romance. This does bring the steam as well, which somebody asked me recently because of the cover, if it was steamy. It definitely brings the steam. Like I said, it was just kind of the last half of the story that started to lose my interest. But otherwise, this was a fun one, especially if you're in the mood for just like a rom-com paranormal. Like, definitely recommend. I did the audio and it was just like a fun time. Next, I picked up Garren Park from Nordica Night, and this one I had seen so many friends loving and talking about, and so I decided to check it out as well. Basically, this was described as enemies to lovers, They are motocross rivals. This one I fell super flat for me and I ended up giving it 3 stars. Basically in here, we follow the 2 heroes. They are neighbors in the same trailer park, which is what the title of the book is referring to. They're also kind of rivals in motocross as well, and just kind of like enemies and rivals in life. Like, they don't get along. Both have complicated relationships with their families as well. One of the heroes is actually getting beat up by his dad at the beginning of the story, and so he ends up running away and trying to escape in the night, and he ends up at the other hero's house because he's in search of his brother. Their 2 brothers are friends, and so he ends up going there, and the one hero's like, well, come on in, like, you look all beat up, like, let me take care of you. And so he ends up taking care of him, patching him up, and then offers him his bed for the night. And so there's like the sharing of a bed and all of that. And it kind of goes from there really quickly of them realizing that they do definitely hate each other, but they also have like some feelings for one another as well that they want to feel out. So I will say I did like that intensity of their relationship, of them both like being intrigued or pulled to one another and kind of hating that about it. I will say I just felt very character driven, like they're very much in a room together all the time. And I kind of wanted like a little bit more, like see a little bit more of the motocross or see them outside of a room together all the time. Just like something more. It just felt very one note of doing the same thing over and over again. We do get dual POV in here, but I had a hard time at telling the 2 heroes apart. Like, they definitely read the same, they talk the same, they both felt kind of immature for their age, they have the same background, they have the same interests, they both have an older brother, they both have complications with their families. Like, it just felt like the same person. So it was hard to differentiate between them both and like connect to either. So yeah, that's why I gave it 3 stars. Next, I read That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon by Kimberly Lemming. So I expected to love this one. I know so many friends who love this series. This one just didn't do it for me, and I gave it 3 stars. So basically in this one, the heroine's name is Cinnamon, and her family owns a spices farm. And one day she accidentally ends up saving a demon, as the title suggests. And so she ends up finding out that this goddess that they all kind of believe in, that they think is good, is actually not. And so they kind of set off on this adventure together to save the world, so to speak. This one was okay for me. I wasn't super invested or pulled into it. I think if you enjoy kind of like cozy fantasies, like this definitely gave me vibes of like Legends and Lattes, but I will say with tons of steam and like BDSM vibes, this will maybe be more up your alley. For me, I just kind of wanted like a little bit more, but I was still invested enough to try the second book. So then I jumped into book 2, which is That Time I Got Drunk and Yeeted a Love Potion at a Werewolf. Again, this is by Kimberly Lemming, and these are all available on Hoopla and Libby, so that is why I jumped into them so quickly as well. This one I actually enjoyed more than book 1, so this one I gave 3.5/4 stars to. Again, this one just kind of gives me like those cozy fantasy vibes, but with like high stakes and adventure and dangers as well. Basically, in this one, the heroine's at a party and she ends up trying to toss a drink at somebody, but she misses and ends up hitting the hero, who is a werewolf, and she doesn't realize at the time that the drink had a love potion in it. And so he immediately is into her, thinks they're mates, he feels like he's imprinted on her, like all of these things. He's super convinced and trying to convince her to be with him. The whole time she's just trying to kind of like break this spell he's under. So it was just like a fun time. I do love a werewolf romance, so I definitely enjoyed this one more. I will say though, I don't think this author is really for me from these 2 books. So while these were fun, they're not like favorites for me, and I probably won't read any more in this series. Next up, I read Caught Up by Liz Tomford. This is the 3rd book in the Windy City series, and this one I ended up giving 4/4.5 stars to. So this one is a sports baseball romance with a single dad hero, and then the heroine ends up becoming his nanny. She's also his coach's daughter, and she's a famous pastry chef as well. This one, I think if you enjoy the series, you're definitely going to enjoy this one. I know a lot of people who love this one so much. For me, there was just like something missing from it. I felt like I definitely felt the length of the book. I also just wanted like, I don't know, a little bit something more, maybe a little bit more time just between the hero and the heroine. I feel like we get a lot of them in a group situation or with his child. And there was just something off about it that I couldn't like super connect to. But I mean, like I said, I'm definitely in the minority. I feel like I know a lot of people just love this and have 0 flaws with it. So definitely check it out. It's a good single dad nanny romance. This is one of those where I always think of like the saying, it takes a village to raise a child, because that's definitely the case here. Like so many people, his teammates, his coach, the nanny, obviously, all of the people are like super involved in taking care of his child with him and kind of raising him amongst them all. So it has that great like team banter and the found family relationship. So it was good. It was just, I felt the length of it, and some of the parts of it just kind of like didn't work for me, and I still just kept comparing it to The Right Move by this author, which I loved earlier this year. So I mean, not fair to the book, but I mean, even without that, like there was just some parts of it that I didn't super connect with. So yeah, I gave it 4/4.5 stars. Next, I jumped into the Shadow Pack series by Kay Easton. So first up is Shadow Wolf, and basically this is a werewolf shifter romance, and it definitely has major ACOTAR Akamath vibes, which at some points kind of felt a little weird, not gonna lie, like too much of a similar situation. But like for what these were, they were just like super fun and entertaining and quick to read through. So like I did enjoy that. So yeah, this is the first book and I gave it 4 stars. So basically this one is a werewolf wolf shifter romance, obviously paranormal. And here we have the rejected mates trope, which if you haven't noticed is one of my new favorite tropes to read. And then we also have like a forbidden and age gap as well. So basically in here, the heroine is part of a wolf pack and she is engaged to the next in line to be the heir, like one of her best friends growing up. And while she doesn't like feel super connected to him, she's also just like willing to go along with it. Like fated mates are super rare in their world. So she just kind of like goes along with whatever her family and his family like tell her to do. So then she ends up meeting the hero, who is from a rival pack. He's there to sign a treaty with her pack. And as soon as they see one another, they instantly, like, their mate bond, like, clicks in and they realize that they are fated mates. And so it definitely gets complicated because he's, like, from the rival pack and she's obviously engaged to somebody else. And so he ends up actually rejecting her publicly in front of everybody, which kind of, like, severs their bond. So then it kind of goes from there with him immediately leaving. And then, of course, her life gets complicated because she's still there with her fiance, with her family. But like they all know now that she has this mate elsewhere. So yeah, I was just invested. It moves super fast. They're easy to fly through. I had a good time with this one and gave it 4 stars. So then I jumped into Shadow Bride, which is the second book in the series. And this follows up from where the first book left off. And this one I ended up giving 3 stars to, and it was just okay for me. Like I said, it definitely has those like Akamath vibes in kind of a weird way. Like some things are a little too similar. The story, again, I feel like it was fast paced again and very just like smutty. There were some, though, other characters' POVs, which we follow the heroine's sister as well, which I wasn't invested in that at all. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't enjoy her chapters. So yeah, this one kind of brought it down for me. So then I did read book 3, which is Shadow Queen, and this is the finished part of this trilogy, so following the same couple. And this one I ended up giving 3 stars to as well. I will say the series kind of like progressively got worse for me. Book 1 is definitely what I was more interested in. I'm one of those people who like I keep trying, or I keep wanting to know how the series is going to end, how this couple's story is going to end. So like I just kept going along on the ride for it. So yeah, this one I gave 3 stars to. I was glad to see how everything worked out for the hero and heroine of the whole series. I will say though, this definitely felt like kind of an extended epilogue. Like this could have just been thrown in to book 2, but we also get POVs of 2 other characters in this one throughout this book, which I was not invested in at all, didn't care, but apparently they're going to get like a spin-off series. And not gonna lie, the ending of this kind of had me interested into that couple's story now, like knowing where it's gonna go, but I don't know if I'll ever get to it. But anyways, so yeah, that's the Shadow Pact series. Then next up, I read To Ravish a Rogue by Sam Nacosta. This is the newest book from this author, which is a monster, pirates, historical romance, set at sea, like all of the fun adventures. This book actually comes out at the end of October, but the audio was already available on Hoopla and Libby early in the month. So I grabbed it as soon as I could and got into it. And this one was just like a fun time. Like it's a quick 6-hour audio read. And I just had fun with this one and gave it 4 stars. Basically, this one was inspired by Joanna Lindsay's Gentle Rogue. The cover definitely gives those vibes as well. And the story in the beginning has that vibe as well. The heroine going on the hero's ship and kind of in hiding. And she pretends to dress up and be a cabin boy. And he, of course, realizes that, you know, she's a woman right away and ends up taking her into his room and is like, well, you need to sleep with me. Very smutty, very steamy. I loved how the hero kind of teases her in the beginning because he knows, you know, that she's in hiding, but she doesn't think he knows. And it kind of just goes from there. There are all sorts of monsters in here. The hero and heroine are both monstrous. And yeah, it's just like a fun time, like monsters, historical, pirates. Like I didn't know I wanted that, but it was a fun time. Next, I read Neutral Zone by Tegan Hunter. This is actually the last book in her Carolina Comet series, which is a hockey romance series. So I gave this one 3.5/4 stars. I've been reading this whole series as they came out on audio, and this was the last one in the series, so I finally caught up to it. And this one was just fun. Like I love Tegan Hunter's books when I'm in the mood for low angst sports romances, like they deliver. And so yeah, in this one we have a hidden identity trope, which I have read a lot of those this month, I've just realized. So in this one, the hero is a hockey player and the heroine works at this kind of like donut, coffee, food truck situation that's featured throughout the series. Then on the side, she also works as a cam girl secretly. And so the hero actually knows that and follows her and is like one of her fans and all of those things. So like she chats with him as a fan on her like cam girl viewings, but she doesn't realize that he is who he is like in real life. So we have that hidden identity trope going on. But this one was just fun. It definitely is steamier than some of the others, I'd say, with the whole cam girl situation and the kind of like the light voyeurism that the hero's into. I liked how the heroine is curvy and a cam girl and she wants to open up her own bakery. So while I didn't super connect to them as a couple, I liked them individually as characters, and like the whole series is just fun. I like seeing the whole friend group. We also get a great moment in here that kind of kicks off into the next spin-off series, which I've already read, the Seattle Serpents book. So we get kind of the kickoff to that because this is the end of the Carolina Comet series. And then we jump into the Seattle Serpents series, which the first book is Body Check, which I did enjoy, but that one I already reviewed last month. So yeah, for this one, for Neutral Zone, I gave it 3.5/4 stars. Next up, I got back to the Green Creek series and I read Heart Song by TJ Klune. This is the 3rd book in the Green Creek series. Again, these are like werewolf, shifter, paranormal romances, and this one I loved so much. My new favorite in the series, I gave it 5 stars. And this one, I don't want to say too much about the plot because I feel like you just need to read it, and especially read them in order. But this one I just loved so much. Basically in here, it is angsty, it's emotional. There is so many emotional like found family moments as well. We also have one of the characters in here is Ace, so we have that representation. I will say though, the romances are, like I mentioned, secondary to me in this series. Like I enjoy them. I enjoy them being in the story, but I am here more for like the paranormal and found family and like the overall plot. So that has me super invested. So yeah, I love this one. I give it 5 stars. I'm really excited to get to the last book of the series because I know so many people who have said that's their favorite. So I am intrigued. Next up, I read Obsession Falls by Claire Kingsley. This is the first book in her new Haven Brothers series and an October release as well. And this one I thought was a great start to the series and I gave it 4 stars. This one is a small town, a grumpy sunshine, a forced proximity, and we have romantic suspense elements in here as well. And this one, I will say the first half of the story I was more invested in. Overall, like I'm just interested in the rest of the series and to see where it's going to go. Basically in this one, the heroine moves back to her small town. She ends up getting a job at the newspaper and she needs a place to stay. So she ends up renting one of the Haven properties. On her move-in day, she's getting into the bath and the hero, he's like renovating the house next door. He like flips houses with his dad. And so this property is kind of like an investment property property where they just rent it out. So he doesn't realize that his sister has already rented it out and that they have a new tenant. So he thinks there's like a squatter situation going on and goes into the house because he obviously has a key. And so he runs into the heroine when she is just about to get into the bath. So their meet cute is her naked, trying to climb into the bath, and her dog like super falling for the hero. I love like that whole burly, grumpy landlord situation that we have going on with the hero. The heroine, basically some things start to happen to her, and where he comes in and immediately feels like he needs to protect her and take care of her. So like moves in with her and like moves her into his place, I should say. I just love this one. I loved how he immediately wants to take care of her and becomes like very growly and possessive when her ex-boyfriend is around. And I loved how he kind of like takes in her dog and like becomes like a little dog dad to him. But yeah, just like so good, and I had a great time with this one. I'm just like excited for the rest of the series. So next up I read Foxglove by Adeline Grace, which is a follow-up to Belladonna, which I loved and read last year. And so basically this is like a YA fantasy. It has like gothic elements. It has the death and maiden trope. I really enjoyed Belladonna, and so I was excited to get to Foxglove, but I knew like some friends had some mixed thoughts on it. But I'm always hoping like, well, maybe I'll be like the exception to that and really love it. Like I was talking to my husband about this recently, like similar to TV shows or movies, I'll be like, well, maybe I'm the exception. Like I'll really love it, even though everybody else is like not enjoying it or not loving it. I just go into things like that, like kind of hoping that everybody else is wrong and that I won't know what they're talking about. But of course it wasn't the case, and everybody was right about this one. And so yeah, I gave this one 3 stars. So yeah, like a lot of other reviewers have said for this one definitely feels like a filler book of just kind of like a book to fill the space in between book 1, but before we get to book 3. So I have high hopes for book 3, but we will see. I mean, these covers are absolutely stunning. Still obsessed with this cover, but yeah, I gave it 3 stars. Next, I had an ALC, or an advanced listener's copy of Where We Belong by Claudia Bergoa. Not sure how to say that last name, but this one I gave 3.5 stars to. So yeah, this one's pretty short, and I hadn't read anything from this author before, but the tropes super sold me. So basically this has a single dad hero, it has friends to lovers, it has brother's best friend, small town, it has the heroine pining for the hero for years. I usually love that. And it has some angst in here as well. So in this one, the hero is a single dad to his 3-year-old daughter, and him and the heroine have always been friends kind of off and on throughout the years. And he's always been in her life though, because he's best friends with her brother. So she's secretly been into him for years, and then she doesn't realize that he's actually been pining for her as well. And so when the story starts, their kind of friendship is on the rocks, because the hero kind of, in his hopes to protect and care for and do the right thing for his daughter, he kind of hurt the heroine accidentally and pushed her away. And so yeah, they start off on the rocks and they kind of come back into one another's lives again. I did like seeing how the hero in this one knows he messed up in the past, and so he is convinced and trying his best to make it up to the heroine and get her back into his life permanently. So I will say the audiobook narrators in particular super sold this one for me. Jason Clark is amazing. I love all of his audios. Anything he narrates, I'm going to listen to. And so I definitely think that helped with this book, because I don't know if I would have enjoyed it as much if I would have read it as an ebook. So yeah, gave it 3.5 stars. So next I jumped back into the Bailey Brothers series by Claire Kingsley, and I read Unraveling Him. I had reviewed the first 2 books in this series last month, and I had said I wasn't super feeling them, wasn't invested, and I was starting to kind of think Claire Kingsley wasn't for me. And I know a couple people commented on that, which I'm so glad you did, because you said, you know, those books weren't for you either, but to continue on because book 3 was so good and the rest of the books get better. So I decided to take your word and continued on, and I'm so glad I did. I love this one so much, gave it 5 stars. This one is just the epitome of grumpy sunshine, small town. Like, it's absolute perfection. I've read multiple series from this author now, and this is easily my favorite from her. Basically in here, the hero is growly and grumpy. He's one of the Bailey brothers, and he owns a business of doing like custom builds on cars. And so he's kind of trying to get his business up and going, and the heroine ends up coming into his life. She actually meets him when she works for her father's auto shop. So she kind of comes into town with him one time with her dad and kind of meets him that way. And then later on, the heroine ends up kind of having a falling out with her dad and wants to leave town. But before she leaves, she needs to fix up her car. And she ends up going to the hero's shop and is like, hey, like, I know we just met, but like, can I use your auto shop? And he's like, who are you? Like, what are you talking about? And so she tells him like, hey, you'll definitely want to help me out because I have like something that will help you out. So he's like intrigued enough, or kind of just like deals with it, and she shows up anyways. So she's just like super sunshiny and shows up and tells him that she knows of this dream car that he wants to restore. Somebody who like owns it is going to be selling it. So they end up going on a road trip together to go and get said car, which it works out. He gets the car, and then in exchange, she's like, now can I use your auto shop to fix up my car so that I can eventually leave town as well? I just love this one. I love how they connect over cars. Like, she's always been raised around cars and building cars and getting dirty and all of those things. She has tattoos and he's just like super into her, and I loved it. Like, they're total opposites, but also like they connect on so many ways. Just so good, like perfect grumpy sunshine. Like, I'm here for it and I can't wait to continue on in the series now. Next up, I read His Saving Grace by Kylie G. This is a debut romance from this author, and I actually got a recommendation of this one when I recently did my Werewolf Wolf Shifter romance recs. I was super intrigued with this one and decided to jump into it. Sadly, though, it didn't work for me and I ended up giving it 3 stars. This one I felt like it had a ton of potential, but it kind of just lacked for me in a lot of ways and didn't go exactly where I needed it to go. So basically in this one, the premise is that the hero and the heroine end up realizing that they're mates, but it kind of gets complicated because they both had mates in the past and they lost them in different ways. And so at first the heroine is not really into thinking like she has this other mate out there. And the hero in this one is a single dad to his daughter, and he wants the heroine to be a part of their life. And so it kind of goes from there. Like I said, the premise super sold me, but from there, the execution of it kind of is where it was lacking for me. I feel like the pacing and the plot was kind of off. Like, at first the heroine isn't into wanting to be his mate or be physical with him, and then kind of she immediately changes like overnight, and we didn't really see the relationship build up of that happening. So I wasn't like super invested or believing it. It is steamy, but yeah, I just wanted more. Like, there are things hinted at or kind of like discussed, but then it doesn't go there fully, and I was just waiting for more to happen. So yeah, it was kind of meandering. Definitely felt like a debut, but like I'm interested enough to possibly check out more. If the author ever writes more in this series, I don't know if they will, but yeah, it was okay. So yeah, I gave it 3 stars. And lastly, I read Sinners Anonymous by Sam Sketcher. So this is the first book, I believe, also in the Sinners Anonymous series. So basically, this is the first book in a dark mafia romance series. And I wanted to check this author out for quite some time. I think earlier this year, I had first heard about her books. I wanted to try them out, especially since they're going to be at the Love in Vegas book signing next week that I'm going to. And so I wanted to try out their books first to see if I would be interested in seeing them or getting the book signed or anything like that. And so I'm glad I tried it out first, because sadly this didn't work for me and I gave it 2 stars. I was interested enough to try this one out. The premise, similar to the previous book, the premise really had me sold. So basically in this one, the story starts off and the heroine's kind of in this like arranged marriage to be with this kind of like mafia leader. And so it's actually the romance though between her and her intended's nephew. So yeah, it kind of goes from there. I just wasn't invested in anything. Like, I didn't care about the plot. I didn't care about the characters. I didn't care about the story. Like, it was just not it for me, and I gave it 2 stars. All right, so those are the 33 books that I've read so far for October. Let me know in the comments if you're still here with me and you watched this whole thing through. So yeah, let me know what you've enjoyed this month, if you've had any favorites, if you've read any of these books that I read, if you feel the same, any of the things, let me know. I am still excited for more new releases that are coming for the last half of October. I also want to get to some spooky season reads. I want to get to some novellas. I want to get to some backlist reads. Like, I want to get to all of the books. So we will see how the month goes. I'm also going to be at the book signing, Love in Vegas, at the end of the month. So let me know if you're going to be at that too. I definitely can't wait. This will be my second time going to that signing and I'm so excited. And yeah, just like let me know all the things. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I'll see you in my next one.